Say the word redline in Boston and most people think of a T, but for decades, redlining was a practice that actively created racially segregated neighborhoods in cities across the country, including Boston. Stephanie Lydon tells us about an exhibit that explores how it created boundaries and disparities that carry on into today.
At age 68, Paula Coar-Gueye contemplates retirement but works a lot as a teacher's aide, and from her Roxbury home, crafting clothes from African cloth. Every bit helps to pay the rent.
And these are my parents.
Owning a home has long been an elusive goal for her family.
My mother always wanted to buy a house. When we were in the projects, my father had a really good, stable job. He made decent money.
But like most people of color in that era, he could not get a home loan.
So this is the 1960s?
Yes.
Growing up in the 1950s and 60s, she watched as white neighbors left and Roxbury struggled. What she didn't know then was how explicitly race informed federal policy that shaped neighborhoods for haves.
Blue and green are the most desirable areas.
And have-nots.
Red is considered hazardous and undesirable.
April DeSimone is part of a team that produced this exhibit on the history of how neighborhoods like Roxbury were redlined. In the 1930s, the federal government created color-coded maps. They were a guideline for banks. Blue and green meant a neighborhood was a safe place for banks to back loans. Red was high risk, something determined largely by who lived there.
In the survey, you have the word Negro, asking what is the percentage of Negroes that live in this area.
Foreign-born residents, Irish, Italians, Jews, also reduced a neighborhood's value. But after World War II, their status changed, and they joined an exodus from the city to the suburbs, where home ownership helped create the country's middle class. Meanwhile, federal guidelines continued to promote racial segregation.
If a neighborhood is to retain stability, it is necessary that property shall continue to be occupied by the same social and racial classes.
These policies, she says, not just in Boston, but urban centers nationwide,
not of the white or Caucasian race,
answer a question that resonates today.
Why are we in a hyper-segregated America?
Redlining, she says, not only excluded people from owning and potentially profiting from a home, but confined them to areas of concentrated poverty and little investment. Until recently.
As you see, there's tons of development happening all around here.
Alex Ponte-Capellan is a housing rights organizer. He grew up here in Jamaica Plains, Eggleston Square, a once redline neighborhood where more than a third of the residents make less than $25,000 a year.
This building here, rents are going to look like $4,000 to $5,000 even for a 3-bedroom.
And so for the people who have lived here for generations, by and large,
it's not housing for them.
Rising rents, he says, are forcing many longtime residents out. As for the people with the means to move in, he says they're likely from communities where the color on a long-ago map was something other than red. Stephanie Lydon, WGBH News.
The Undesign the Redline exhibit is on display at the Jamaica Plain Brewery through the end of December.